The Class 365 networker is one of many British EMUs that, despite no longer being in service in real life, can still be seen and, dare I say, enjoyed in Train Simulator. Today, we're looking at the 365 and her accompanying enhancement pack from Armstrong Powerhouse. But first, a brief run-through on the history of the real units. In the early 1990s, British Rail were planning to build the Class 371 and Class 381 Universal Networkers, but both units were cancelled due to a lack of funding. However, new trains were still needed for longer distance regional services in South East England and on the East Coast Main Line out of London King's Cross. As such, the Class 465 design was modified to be more suitable for regional services, with the end result being the Class 365. In 1994 and 1995, 41 examples of these 4-car units were built by ABB at Holgate Road Works in York, with the first unit entering service in 1996. The first 16 units, numbered from 365-501 to 365-516, were originally equipped to run on the third rail 750-volt DC lines in southern England, entering service with Connex South Eastern in 1996 and 1997. As for the remaining 27 units, numbered from 365-517 to 365-541, they were equipped with a pantograph for service on lines electrified at 25 kV AC from overhead wires, and ran from London King's Cross to Peterborough, Cambridge or King's Lynn. Thinking back to the Connex units, their time in the southeast was short-lived because, in 2004, they had their third rail pickups removed and replaced with pantographs prior to their transfer to West Anglia Great Northern, thus freeing up some Class 317 units for use on the Thameslink route. In the early 2000s, all but one of the Class 365s were modified with air conditioning in the driver's cabs, thus requiring a significant change to the cab front, and the units were subsequently nicknamed Happy Trains. Here's a comparison between the two different cab fronts on the Class 365. Personally, I don't know which version I prefer, but the Happy Train facelift makes the unit stand out a fair bit from the other networkers. 365-526 was the only member of her class to never receive the Happy Train facelift, due to her involvement in the Potter's Bar crash of 2002. Between August 2002 and January 2003, and prior to her permanent transfer, 365-502 was hired by WAGN to cover for 365-526. This scene, with 365-502 and a Class 317 at King's Cross, was inspired by a photograph I saw on Flickr. As the years went on, the 365s continued to be a staple of regional services out of King's Cross, going on to work with first Capital Connect, and later, go via Thameslink Railway under the Great Northern sub-brand. In 2017, and following the arrival of new Class 387 and Class 700 units, the 365s were relegated to only running at peak times. Great Northern retained 21 units for services from London King's Cross to Peterborough or Royston, with the remaining units stored at Ely. In 2018 and 2019, 10 365s were used by Abellio ScotRail on the Edinburgh to Glasgow run to help ease a rolling stock shortage, which was caused by the delayed entry into service of the Class 385 units. There was also an issue with the shape of the 385's windscreens, but that has since been fixed, from what I gather. The Class 365s didn't last much longer in service following their brief stint in Scotland. A special farewell trip took place in May 2021, with 365-522 leading classmates 365-520 and 365-502 on the 1822 King's Cross to Peterborough service. After that final run, Most of the remaining vehicles from this class were sent for scrap. Sadly, instead of having a complete 365 unit surviving into preservation, only 3 coaches are left. This unusual set, comprising half of Unit 365-524 and 1 driving coach from Unit 365-540, is preserved at Ethorne Station on the East Kent Railway, of all places. These coaches have apparently been converted into some sort of restaurant and events space, and as weird as it is to see just these 3 units here with no pantograph coach as well, I guess it's still better than being scrapped. At some point, although I don't remember exactly when, Dovetail added the EKR as a free update to their extended Chatham mainline route, specifically the version that goes all the way to Ramsgate and Dover. The current mainline station at Shepherd's Well is only a short walk away from the EKR station. The 365 came to Train Simulator as part of Dovetail's ECML London to Peterborough route, released in December 2013. The real line has had numerous major infrastructure changes in the time since the TS add-on's release, and although the in-game route is now looking pretty outdated, it does look a little better with Armstrong underpantses, track and signal enhancement packs. Richmond Power Sausage released their Class 365 enhancement pack in June 2019. It's still available from AP's website as of November 2024, where it costs a staggering £15, or $32.26 NZD, at full price. That's on top of the base requirements for the EP to even work. Said requirements are DTG's Southeastern Class 465 and ECML London to Peterborough. So the total cost of getting the EP to work is $80.24 NZD, or around £37.27. Make of that what you will. As for what you get in the enhancement pack, we'll start off with the included liveries, of which there are only 6. They are as follows: Connex Southeastern, Network Southeast, Original Front, Network Southeast Happy Train, First Capital Connect, Great Northern, and ScotRail. For whatever reason, AP left out the WAGN era advertising liveries, which lasted into the First Capital Connect era. And for reference, the units that received those liveries were 365-510, 365-519, 365-531, and 365-540. Besides the liveries, the other features in this EP include, but are not limited to, driver-only operation, controlled by pressing Ctrl and R, working speed set, wheel slip protection, realistic physics, an arcing pantograph, automatic unit numbering, and of course, destination displays that can be changed by the player by pressing the F7 and F8 keys. On the Connex Southeastern variant, there's an additional VIA option for the second line of the destination display, controlled by pressing Shift F7 and Shift F8. A header code can also be displayed on this variant of the unit, and the first digit is controlled by pressing Ctrl F3 and Ctrl F4, while the second digit is controlled by Ctrl F5 and Ctrl F6. I recommend reading the manual for information on the other keyboard controls, as well as detailed explanations on how the features work. As for the audio, I think AP did a decent job at capturing the Networker's iconic traction motor sound. Here's a demonstration of a 365 pair leaving Sandy Station, followed by a run-by at the curiously named New Zealand Bridge. I wasn't a fan of the default sounds, especially where the horn was concerned. The current enhancement packs for the Class 365, Class 465 and Class 466 are decent replacements for the old Metcam sound pack that AP used to have on their website. There aren't many issues on the 365 that I can think of, but one of them is the lack of opening cabside windows, although that's a limitation of the original model. Apparently, the motor sounds included with this EP are a bit off, but apart from being too quiet, they're perfectly fine to me. Of course, you can't say anything good or bad about the 365 on AP's Facebook page or YouTube videos, since they disabled comments a year or two ago. I find their reasoning for this decision, as given on the introduction to their Facebook page, to be very confusing, since I thought the real reason was that AP couldn't handle any criticism of their products. Even Dovetail and Rivet still allow comments on their Facebook posts. But regardless of the real reason, I think disabling the comments was a bad move on AP's part. Where the quality of their add-ons is concerned, AP is such a mixed bag these days that it's not funny. You also get 3 scenarios with the Class 365 Enhancement Pack. All 3 are for ECML London to Peterborough and set in 1997, 2011 and 2014, complete with suitable rolling stock for their respective time periods on AI services. But I reckon AP should have made some scenarios for the Chatham mainline as well. At the time of this video's production, 2 of the scenario requirements are AP's VP185 and MTU enhancement packs for the Class 43 HST, but the HST EPs are being discontinued ahead of AP releasing new HST packs. Well, I say new, but they're actually still built on the old Kuju era models. Go figure. Incidentally, the new HST MTU pack was released on the 23rd of November, and quite frankly, I was shocked when I saw that it costs £30 at full price. I can't justify spending that much money on a train simulator add-on, no matter how good it may be. And don't get me started on AP doing separate packs for each power unit variation on the HST. Again. In any case, when the Class 43 MTU enhancement pack was still available, the total cost of the DLC requirements for the 365 scenarios was $332.20 NZD, or £154.37. That includes the base packs required for the HST and Class 91 EPs. I dare say the full list of requirements would have been even more expensive if AP had added scenarios for the 365 on the Chatham mainline as well. At the end of the day, I think the Armstation Land Rover Class 365 Enhancement Pack is just decent, but it's a pity that she's so expensive at full price, and that you have to get a separate EP for the Class 465 and Class 466. On the subject of networkers, if only we could get an EP, or better yet, an entirely new model, for the Class 165 and Class 166 DMUs. Thinking back to the 365 EP, I reckon it would have benefited from entirely new models for the cab interior and passenger view. But given how much time has passed since its release, I don't expect AP to update this thing any further. As it stands now, I give the Class 365 EP a 6 out of 10.